Welcome to Untold History, the space where we explore the secrets that shape the world. In this fourth chapter of our Eternal Rome series, we will witness a moment of internal tension that redefined the destiny of the Republic. As Rome expanded its territories, so did social inequalities and power struggles among its elites. The Gracchi brothers attempted to change the course of history with bold reforms, but their tragic fate ushered in an era of instability. How did Rome manage to face these crises and reform itself from within? Join us to find out. After the victorious Punic Wars and the conquest of new territories, Rome reached an unprecedented level of wealth and power. However, this rapid growth also brought with it profound imbalances. While patrician elites accumulated vast tracts of land and wealth from the spoils of war, small Roman peasants were increasingly displaced. The arrival of slaves captured in wars increased reliance on slave labor, further reducing opportunities for free citizens. Many of them, unable to compete, abandoned their lands and were forced to migrate to Rome, increasing the population of a city already facing housing and resource problems. This social imbalance marked the beginning of a deepening gap between the rich and the poor, and also between the Senate and the demands of the people. In the midst of this crisis, two emblematic figures emerged, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. These brothers, belonging to a prominent patrician family, embraced the plebeian cause and attempted to implement reforms that would alleviate social and economic inequality in Rome. Tiberius Gracchus, as tribune of the plebs in 133 before Christ, proposed a radical agrarian reform that would redistribute the public lands accumulated by the aristocracy among the poorest citizens. However, his proposal faced fierce resistance from the Senate, which perceived it as a threat to its power. The opposition reached its climax when Tiberius was assassinated along with hundreds of his followers in a violent clash at the Forum. Years later, his younger brother, Gaius Gracchus, took up the fight again with an even more ambitious vision. In addition to continuing land reform, he proposed measures to regulate grain prices, grant Roman citizenship to Italic allies, and reduce the power of the Senate by strengthening the people's courts. Although it initially made significant gains, it didn't take long for the senatorial opposition to organize again. In 121 BC, Gaius was also killed, ending a period of hope for the most disadvantaged classes. The tragic fate of the Gracchi symbolizes the unresolved tensions between the elites and the people, as well as the growing violence that would begin to characterize Roman politics. With the Gracchus reforms thwarted and inequalities intact, Rome began to rely more and more on its generals and armies to maintain order. Territorial expansion required constant military force, and generals began to amass power and influence that rivaled that of the Senate. Gaius Marius, a general of plebeian origins, introduced military reforms that professionalized the Roman army. By recruiting propertyless citizens and offering them land as a reward for their service, Marius created a new dynamic of loyalty. Soldiers no longer answered to the state, but to their commanders. This military transformation, although effective in the short term, laid the groundwork for future internal conflicts. Generals such as Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar would take advantage of the system to directly challenge the Senate and fight for control of Rome. The period of crisis and reform in the Roman Republic marked a turning point in its history. Social tensions, political power struggles, and the rise of military generals reflected the limitations of a system that could no longer adapt to the demands of an ever-expanding empire. Although the Gracchus brothers' reforms failed to change the immediate course of the Republic, their ideas inspired future generations and left a legacy of resilience in the face of injustice. On the other hand, the increasing militarization of Roman politics foreshadowed the civil wars that would eventually lead to the collapse of the republican system. The internal crisis of the Roman Republic revealed the deep contradictions of a society that tried to balance expansion with equity. The failed reforms and the rise of the generals marked the beginning of the end of an era and the prelude to a new stage in the history of Rome. How would the Republic evolve towards collapse and give way to dictatorship? Join us in the next chapter to explore the rise of one of Rome's most legendary men, Julius Caesar.